Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is anna-mart, or Sam for short. This is the final tutorial of this whole series. It's been 6 weeks. I'm so glad that you were able to follow along all the way up until the end. This is very exciting, and today we're going to make our final renders. We're going to make a video file animation as well as an image. You can post this on social media or just keep it, and it looks really cool, and I'm very excited to teach you this. Let's go. Okay, so everything is ready now. We already did the materials, the setup, the lighting, everything is ready, and now all we need to do is render it so that we can have a final image and video file. Those are the two things we're going to do today. The first thing is the image. There are a few settings that we need to change first before we can do that, and the first thing is the render engine. I know when we did the materials I already said a little bit about this, but I'm just going to go over that again. So in this render tab, which is this camera thing, at the top you will see there's an option that says render engine, and if you select it, you have 3 options: Eevee, Workbench and Cycles. So Eevee is a real-time render engine which you use to do quick renders and renders that aren't that realistic. It is really good and really fast, but for more realistic things you want to use Cycles because it uses physics and lighting which are much closer to the real world. And then you never use Workbench. It's not a very good renderer. So for final images we use Cycles if it's a realistic image. The other thing is the device over here. So at the moment it says CPU, which is what it would say for most people. But I have a GPU card, so if I select it and then click on GPU compute, then it would change to my GPU card. What that basically does is it uses the GPU card that I've installed in my computer to render, which makes it a lot faster. If you don't see that option and you do have a GPU card, just go up here to where it says edit and then click on preferences, and then this will come up. If you then go to system, you will see that mine is selected on CUDA, yours might be on none. If you have the option that says CUDA, select that, and then you can select your GPU card if you have one. And then you can just go down here and click Save Preferences. So if you have a GPU card, please use it, it will make your rendering much faster. And then the next thing we have to do is change the sampling. So if you move around in your viewport, you will see all this grain appearing, those tiny blocks, which makes it hard to see for a moment, and then it becomes clearer and clearer. And that happens because more samples are taken. So the computer moves over a section of the image and then it removes the grain, in this case 32 times. It goes over it 32 times, and every time it takes away a little bit of the grain. And when you make a render, it also does that, but in this case it does it 128 times. So for the example, I'm going to leave it at 128, but when we do our final render, I like to put it on 800, which is a lot and it will take longer. And if you have a really slow computer and you're working with a CPU card, you might want to make it lower, like 300 or whatever works for you, where it still looks clear and not so grainy, but it doesn't take that long. So yeah, we'll come back to that in a bit. Then we have to go down here to where it says performance, and then there's an option that says tiles. If you have a CPU card, then you can leave it just as it is, but if you have a GPU card, it's better to make the tiles bigger. So when we render, you'll see later, these blocks will appear which are systematically rendered into an image. They're gray at the beginning and then they turn into the image. And the tiles is the size of those blocks. So 64 would be relatively small. Like, let me give you an example. Those tiny blocks would be 64. Okay? But if you have a GPU card, we want to change it to around 256. both of them. And then if I render it, you will see it would be much larger. But with the GPU card, it would be quicker. With the CPU card, the tiny tiles will be quicker. Then we want to go to the output menu, which is the second one after the render menu. And then here at the top, you would see something that says resolution. So the default resolution is 1920 by 1080, which is a full screen image. And then you would see the percentage. On yours, it should be 50%. On mine, it's 100% now. So you would think that the image would render as 1920 by 1080 if you just render it. But if it says 50%, the image is actually half the size of what it should be. So if I render it at 50%, you'll see it's this size. But if I render it at 100%, you'd see it's much bigger. Okay, so for the final render, we want it at 100%. Now that those things are out of the way, we want to do a test render. So go to the render tab and then make sure your samples are relatively low, like 128. And then to render, you can either go up here to where it says render and click render image, or you can just click F12, which is the shortcut. And then you just wait until it's finished. It shouldn't take too long, but I know, like my computer in the beginning, before I had a GPU card, took really long. But you just wait until it's finished and then we'll talk again. Okay, so now our test render is finished. And in this render, you can just look if you like what you're seeing. So if there's any problems with the setup or the placing of any of the meshes or the lighting, you can see that now, and then you can fix it before we do the final render, because it's going to take a while, and if there's a mistake in it, then it's not going to be very nice to do it all over again. So just check and see if everything is right and if you like it. I think I'm going to change my camera and move it down a little bit, but except for that, everything looks fine for me. And select the camera and press G to move it. I'm going to move it down to about here. If you want to zoom in and out, press G, then click on the middle mouse button and then just slide your mouse in and out. That's how I'm going to leave mine. And now we can do our final render. Your test render would give you a pretty good idea of how fast or slow your computer is. If it's really slow, then don't make the samples 800, make it like 300 or 500 or something. But if it's relatively fast, then you can go for 800 and it'll look good in the end and hopefully not take too long. So now that our samples is right, just press F12 or render and then render image, and then we wait. And there we go, that's our final image and the render is done. Now we just need to save this, so go up here to where it says image and then save as, and then you can just name it and save it in the file wherever you want it. Now that we know how to make a single render image, we're going to make a video file of our whole animation. So that single image was one frame, and as you can remember, our entire animation was 70 frames. So basically we are going to render 70 images and then compile them into one video. It's going to take longer, and if you want to, you can make the samples 300 for the video, which I would recommend since it would probably render overnight or for a whole day if you have a slow computer. Otherwise it should be quicker, depends on what hardware you have and what type of computer you have. Anyways, so we want to go to the output tab and then scroll down to the bottom, and then we go to where it says output, and this is where we're going to make all of the settings and changes that we need to make for the animation. You will see that the file format is PNG at the moment. If you click on that, it will give you lots of options. You can either select image files as in a normal render, where you would use an image file, or a movie file, which is at the right. And you can make a render by selecting one of those movie files and then just making one render. But there are many problems with that, and the chances of the file getting corrupted or the computer crashing is really high, and then you lose all of that time that you spent. So I like to render every frame as an image and then compile them at the end, which is much more risk-free, and if it crashes you can just start it up right where it left off. So that's a much better option. So click it on PNG, and then we want to select a file directory. So just click on that and then look for the place where you want to save all of the images that we are going to compile into a video. So just click on that. I'm going to save it in this file called renders, and then you can just click on accept. We're almost finished. Now all you need to do is make sure that overwrite is selected, as well as under post-processing the sequencer and compositing is also selected. Now before we jump in and start rendering, we just have to make sure that every frame will fit into our camera view. So at the moment we're at frame 0, and for this I'm going to go out of rendered view because it will make it really slow. So just click Z and then solid, and then we want to use our arrows, left and right arrows, to go through all of the frames and make sure the pan fits into the camera view. So this is frame 0, and I'm just going to go through all of them. And right here we already have a problem at frame 30. The pan's handle is out of the image, and once we flip it, the whole egg is also out of the image. So for the animation, I'm going to move the camera up with G all the way until there, and I'm also going to zoom out. So G, middle mouse button, and slide out. So let's check again from the beginning. And just make sure everything fits. In this position, everything fits for me, so we can go back into rendered view and then render our animation. Where we previously said render and then render image, this time we're going to click on render animation. So let's just click on render animation, and there we go. Now it's going to start rendering every single frame. So this is going to take 70 frames of rendering. This is going to take a while, but hopefully not too long, and then I'll see you when the 70 frames are finished. Okay, let's say your computer crashes, as mine just did, and your renders stop. But don't worry about that, because since you made each frame an image and not a complete video, you already have all of those frames. So all you need to do is click on this override button, which is selected, and deselect it, and then you can just click render animation again, and it'll start up where it left off the last time. Okay, so now our render results are finished and all 70 frames have been rendered. We can go out of this and back into our 3D viewport, and now we want to compile all of the images into a video. So we go up here into the upper left corner and click on video sequencer. Okay, then this new window will open up where we can put all of our images and then put it into a video. To add the images, we click on Shift A and then image sequence, and then you can go to the place where you saved all of the images and where they were rendered, and then you have to select all of them. So just press A to select them all and click on add image strip, and then this purple strip will be added, which is all of the images. Then to see the properties menu, just go up here to view and click on sidebar, and then this new sidebar or properties menu will open up. The first thing we want to do is go to this time drop down, click on that, and then we want to change some of these settings. As you can see, the start and the end frames are not at the right places, because down here it starts at frame 1 and ends at frame 70, but up here it starts at frame 53. So we want to change that to 1, and then the end will automatically change to 71, and the duration has to be 70, which is how long our animation is. Then we can go back down to this output tab where we did all of the settings previously. And this time we want to change the format to an FFmpeg video, because now we're going to compile it into a video file. Then we can go down to post-processing and make sure sequencer is checked. Now we click on render and render animation. This part will go much more quickly because it basically just needs to add the images together, so it'll only take hopefully not more than a minute to finish this part, because it doesn't have to render each frame again. Once it's done, if you go to the folder where you saved all of the images, the video file should also be there. It's usually the second from the top. Just select that and then we will be able to watch our animation. That looks really good and realistic to me. And that's the end. That's exactly how you will be able to make your own video file animation as well as an image render. If it's a little bit too grainy, you might want to re-render it with more samples, but it will take a little bit longer. But for now, this is all you need to know about how to render an image and a video. And that's it. That's the end of the series. And hopefully, you're not a beginner anymore and you can move on to more advanced things. If you liked this series and if it was helpful in any way, please leave a like, subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell and leave a comment down below.